A wonderful day to all of you. I am Stephanie and I am your teacher for today. My dear students, how are you? Are you doing good? Well, I'm glad to hear that. For today's lesson, you will be able to identify the 5 elements of the story: the characters, setting, plot, conflict, and theme. Compose character analysis and analyze a short story using its elements. Class, before we start our lesson, I prepared a game which entitled 4 Picks 1 Word. I will divide the class into 4 and each group will try to identify the word reflected by the pictures that will be flashed on the screen. Clap your hands first before telling your respective answers. The group who will get more answers correctly will be given additional points in our next activity. Class, are you ready? Let's begin with the first set of pictures. Yes, it's a character. Absolutely. Next. Correct, it's a plot. Now, the third set. Very good, it's a setting. Next. Conflict is correct, precisely. Now, for the last part. Yes, it's a theme. Class, you all did a great job. Now, I have a question for you. What is your favorite short story? Do you have one? Why did you like it? Which part of the story that made you interested with it? Class, did you know that before a story becomes beautiful, there are pieces of details that makes it beautiful? All of the words that we've discovered are part of our discussion for today, because our topic for today is all about the elements of the story. Through a Chinese story entitled The Wonderful Pear Tree. So, class, let's dig deeper about the said topic. Let us read a story entitled The Wonderful Pear Tree. This story is a Chinese folktale translated by Hart A. Geis. Once upon a time, a countryman came into town on market day and brought a load of very special pears with him to sell. He set up his barrow in a good corner and soon had a great crowd round him, for everyone knew he always sold extra fine pears, though he did also ask an extra high price. Now, while he was crying up his fruit, a poor old rag-hungry looking priest stopped just in front of the barrow and very humbly begged him to give one of the pears. But the countryman, who was very mean and very nasty-tempered, wouldn't hear of giving him any. And as the priest didn't seem inclined to move on, he began calling him all the bad names he could think of. "Good sir," said the priest, "you have got hundreds of pears on your barrow. I only asked you for one. You would never even know you had lost one. Really? You needn't get angry. Give him a pear that is going bad. That will make him happy," said one of the crowds. "The old man is quite right. You'd never miss it." "I've said, I won't and I won't," cried the countryman, and all the other people close by began shouting, first one thing and then another, until the constable of the market, hearing the hubbub, hurried up, and when he had made out what was the matter, pulled some cash out of his purse, brought a pear, and gave it to the priest. For he was afraid that the noise would come to the ears of the mandarin, who was just being carried down the street. The old priest took the pear with a low bow and held up it in front of the crowd, saying, "You all know I have no home, no parents, no child, no clothes of my own, no foods, because I gave everything up when I became a priest." So it puzzles me how anyone can be so selfish and so stingy as to refuse to give one single pear. Now, I am quite a different sort of man from this countryman. I have got here some perfectly exquisite pears, and I shall feel most deeply honored if you will accept them from me. Why on earth didn't you eat them yourself instead of begging one for one? Asked a man in the crowd. "Ah," answered the priest, "I must grow them first." So he ate up the pear, only leaving a single pip. Then he took a pick which was fastened across his back, dug a deep hole in all the ground at his feet, and planted the pip, which he covered all over with earth. "Will someone fetch me some hot water to water this?" he asked. The people who were crowding round, though he was only joking, but one of them ran and fetched a kettle of boiling water and gave it to the priest, who very carefully poured it over the place where he had showed the pip. Then, almost while he was pouring, they saw first tiny green spout, and then another come pushing them heads above the ground. Then one leaf uncurled, and then another, while the shoots kept growing taller and taller. Then there stood before them a young tree with a few branches, with a few leaves, then more leaves, then flowers, and last of all clusters of huge, ripe, sweet-smelling pears weighing the branches down on the ground. Now the priest's face shone with the pleasure, and the crowd roared with delight when he picked up the pears one by one until they were all gone, handing them round with a bow to each man present. Then the old man took the pick again, hacked at the tree until it fell with a crush, when he shouldered it, leaves and all, and with a final bow walked away. All the time this had been going on, the countryman, quite forgetting his barrow and pears, had been in the midst of the crowd, standing on the tip of his toes and straining his eyes to try to make out what was happening. But when the old priest had gone and the crowd was getting thin, he turned round to his barrow and saw with horror that it was quite empty. Every single pear had gone. In a moment he understood what had happened. The pears the old priest had been so generous in giving away were not his own. They were the countryman's. What was more, one of the handles of his barrow was missing, and there was no doubt that he'd starting from home with two. He was in a towering rage and rushed as hard as he could after the priest. But just as he turned the corner, he saw, lying close to the wall, the barrow handle itself, which without any doubt was the very pear tree which the priest had cut down. All the people in the market were simply splitting their sides with laughter. But as for the priest, no one saw him anymore. Now, let us answer some guide questions. Can someone read and answer the first question? Yes, that's right. The character in the story is the merchant, the priest, and the constable of the market. The second question: where did the story take place? Yes, that's right. It is in the town during market day. How about the main idea of the story? Yes, it's greediness. Very good. Class, have you pointed out some points on what are the pieces that makes up a short story? Let's discuss further on how can we understand a story better. As we've mentioned, today's lesson is all about elements of a short story. But first, what do you know about short stories? That's right, it is a brief, fictional prose narratives. As the term implies, it can be read in one sitting, and the events are contained. Short stories have 5 basic elements. First is characters. What do you know about characters? Yes, characters do not limit to a person only. It could be an animal too. In short, it could be someone who take part to the story. In the wonderful pear tree, we have mentioned a while ago the characters of the said story. So class, the next element is the setting. So what is all about setting? Anyone? Very good. Authors often describe setting as landscape, scenery, buildings, seasons, or weather to create and provide a strong sense of setting. In the story that we have read, the setting is described as the market day and town. Thus, the next element is the plot. Anyone who can define a plot? So, I have here the unarranged plot of the wonderful pear tree. You have to arrange it according to its sequence. So class, let's arrange the sequence of events. Someone did, however, purchase a pear for the shabby. The priest ate it and left some seeds behind, which he planted in front of the buyers. It actually grew into a large pear tree. The shabby priest asked for a pear tree to a merchant. The merchant found out his borrow and pears were gone. A country squire who refused to give an elderly priest even a single pear. The crowds started to pick pears. Alright, the plot is the sequence of events that happened throughout the story, as well as the characters, actions that relates to the conflict. So class, here is a graphic organizer that breaks down the plot of the story. The plot breakdown of the book The Wonderful Pear Tree. The introduction. The shabby priest asks for a pear to a merchant. The rising action is a country squire who refused to give an elderly priest even a single pear. The climax of the story is someone did, however, purchase a pear tree for the shabby priest. The priest ate it and left some seeds behind, which he planted in front of the buyers. It actually grew into a large pear tree. For the falling action, crowds started to pick pears, and for the resolution, the merchant found out his borrow and pears were gone. Now, what is conflict? Yes, a conflict is the struggle between two people or things in a short story. The main character is usually on one side of the central conflict, and it has 4 types. First, person versus person. It is the struggle between two characters. Next is the person versus himself. It is the inner conflict. Then, the person versus nature. It is the problem between the forces of nature, such as disaster, disease, and lastly, the person versus society. It is a character versus its societal norms. Class, What about the conflict of the story that we have read earlier? Yes, you're right. It is a person versus person because the countrymen refused to give the priest a pitch. Let us now proceed to the last element, the theme. What do you know about the theme? Very well said. It is the central idea or belief of the short story. In the story, what is the theme? Yes, it's about greediness. Can anyone enumerate the 5 basic elements of a short story? Excellent. Okay, class, do you have any questions and clarifications? So, I know you have learned a lot from our lesson for today. So, anyone who can summarize the lesson? Very good, and thank you for your answers. At this moment, I would like to give you a short and simple recap of what has been discussed earlier, which is the 5 elements of a short story. The first one, the characters. They can be people or animals who take part in the action of a short story. Note that the character is not limited to one person only. Second, the setting. It is the time and place where the story occurs. Authors often use descriptions of landscape, scenery, building, seasons, or weather to provide a strong sense of setting. Third is plot. It is a pattern of events that develops from interactions between characters. A plot is a series of events and character actions that relate to the central conflict. The next one is conflict. Is any of the problem that a character encounters in the story. A conflict is a struggle between two people or things in a story. And the last is the theme. It is the meaning behind events and character of actions in the story. A theme is a central idea, message, or purpose of a short story. Class, to sum it up, here is a graphic organizer that you can read.
For you to apply what you have learned, let's have an activity regarding the story The Monkey's Paw. I will divide you into 4 groups. This will be the group 1 and 2, and this will be the group 3 and 4. We will be watching a movie, and after watching, we will do the mystery quotation, wherein I will give you 10 minutes to brainstorm about the elements of the story The Monkey's Paw. I will pause on the board a quotation which are the elements and identify what the quotation tells. Write your answer on the whiteboard and show it to me after I count 1 to 5. Each correct answer has 5 points. Do you understand? Very good. Now let us first watch the movie. What can you say about the movie we have watched? Yes, Precious? Absolutely. It is nice and entertaining. Now, it's time for you to do the brainstorming. But before we proceed, let us recall our guidance in conducting a group activity. What are those? Yes, Lara? Respect each other's idea. What else? Yes? Be participative. And lastly, yes, JR? Work silently. Now, here are the quotations for your activity. Number 1, Mr. and Mrs. White, Herbert and Sergeant Morris. Number 2, place of this story. Number 3, when did the story happen? Number 4, climax of this story. Number 5, ending of this story. Number 6, theme of this story. And number 7, lesson of this story. You may now start answering. Class, your time is about to end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are all groups finished? Very good. Now let us check your answers. The answer for number 1 is character. For number 2, the story takes place in England. For number 3, the story happened during winter's night. For number 4, what is the climax of the story? Yes, Saskia? Very good. Let's proceed to number 5. What is the ending of the story? Yes, Dustin? Excellent. Now for number 6, what is the theme of the story? Yes, Jansen? Exactly. The story is all about death. And lastly, number 7, the moral lesson of the story is be careful what you wish for. Okay, group 1 and 4 got a perfect score. Let's give them 10 claps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And group 2 and 3 got 6 out of 7. Let's give them 5 claps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it clear to all of you now the elements of the short story? Very good. Okay, class. Now that we have read the story, The Wonderful Pear Tree, we will now test if you really understand the story. I will assess your knowledge by giving you 5 items to answer. You will answer it for 5 minutes, then I will collect your papers later on. Is that clear? Okay. Your answers will be graded according to the following criteria. Relevance to the topic, 30%. Grammar and punctuation, 30%. Idea and correctness, 40%, for a total of 100%. Kindly bring out 1/2 sheet of paper crosswise and your ball pen. Are you ready? Okay, so let's proceed to the quiz. Number 1, list all the characters in the story The Wonderful Pear Tree, including the respective role. Number 2, briefly define and describe the plot of the story. Number 3, briefly explain what is the conflict of the story and what type of conflict it is. Number 4, how is the story The Wonderful Pear Tree being told, and what moral lesson can we get from the story? And number 5, kindly narrate the reason why the crowd get angry with the merchant. Okay, class, your time is up. Kindly pass your papers forward and into the center aisle. For your assignment, read the story which entitled A Little Accident by Lucian in page 30 and identify the basic elements of a short story. Write your answer on one whole sheet of paper.